is late Sunday afternoon. You are standing at the edge of your garden, rubbing the ache deep in your lower back. Your knees are damp with soil, your fingernails are stained green, and you have just spent 3 exhausting hours on your hands and knees pulling weeds. You look down at the bucket of pulled roots, feeling a brief, tired sense of victory. But deep down, you already know the bitter truth. By next weekend, it will look exactly as if you had done nothing at all. Or maybe you watched a clever internet video, mixed a foaming bottle of vinegar and baking soda, sprayed it everywhere, and watched the weeds drink it up and keep growing. Now I want you to sit with this. We have been sold 2 great lies about how to keep a piece of ground clean. And both of those lies are costing you your money, your health, and the very soil you are trying to tend. The first lie sits on the shelf at the hardware store. It comes in a bright plastic jug with a spray wand attached to it, and it usually contains a chemical called glyphosate. You spray it, and yes, the weed dies. But I want to tell you the honest truth about what else happens when you pull that trigger. You are not just killing the dandelion. You are killing the soil. Beneath your feet is an entire universe of microscopic life, fungi, bacteria, earthworms, the very things that make dirt into living soil. The chemicals in those jugs decimate that life. They linger in the ground for months, sometimes years. You are poisoning the foundation of your garden to solve a temporary problem on the surface. And worse, you are putting a compound down where your dog walks, where your children play, and where the rain washes it straight into the water table. It is like trying to cure a headache by cutting off your head. Technically, the headache is gone, but the cost is ruinous. The second lie lives on the internet, and it is the one that makes me shake my head the most, because it preys on good people who are trying to do the right thing. You have seen the videos. A smiling person tells you to mix plain kitchen vinegar with baking soda. They pour them together. It foams up like a volcano, and they tell you this magical bubbling mixture will destroy your weeds. I want you to think back to your high school chemistry class. Vinegar is an acid, baking soda is a base. When you mix them together in a bottle, that dramatic foaming is the sound of them neutralizing each other. The acid kills the base. The base kills the acid. When the foam settles, what you are left with in that bottle is water, some escaped carbon dioxide, and a weak salt called sodium acetate. The pH is almost entirely neutral. It has no weed-killing power whatsoever. You are essentially spraying slightly salty water onto a plant. The weed will drink it. Thank you for the hydration, and keep right on growing. The people making those videos do not care if your weeds die. They only care that the foaming volcano looks good on a screen, so you will click on it. Stop letting the chemical companies sell you poison, and stop letting the internet sell you illusions. There are honest, ancient, scientifically sound methods to keep a garden clean that cost almost nothing. They do not ruin your soil, and most importantly, they do not require you to spend your precious weekends kneeling in the dirt until your spine aches. My name is Daniel Yoder. I am Amish, and I farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. My wife, Rebecca, tends a large garden that feeds our family of 9 throughout the year. Her garden is a thing of order and quiet beauty. You will not find bindweed choking her tomatoes, and you will not find her spending her Saturdays on her knees pulling weeds by hand. We do not buy plastic jugs of herbicide, and we certainly do not mix up useless foaming potions. Today, I am going to show you exactly how we handle the weeds, the real science behind why it works, and the 3 distinct methods you need, because treating a weed in a concrete crack is entirely different from treating a deep-rooted weed in a garden bed. I will give you the exact steps, clear and simple. Before we treat a single plant, you have to understand the enemy. If you do not understand how a weed thinks, you will be fighting it forever. There are 2 kinds of weeds that break a gardener's heart. The first is the taproot weed, like the dandelion. It sends a thick carrot-like root deep into the earth. When you grab the leaves and pull, the root snaps off an inch below the soil. You think you won, but the plant simply uses the stored energy in the remaining root to push up 2 new heads where there was only 1. You did not kill it. You pruned it. The second is the creeping weed, like bindweed, ground elder, or horsetail. These are the nightmares. They run on an underground network of roots called rhizomes. You pull one up, and you are just breaking a tiny twig off an underground tree. The rhizome network can stretch for yards beneath your garden, storing energy, waiting. To defeat them, you have to stop fighting the leaves and start fighting the environment. You have to change the rules of the game. Here are the 3 honest methods that actually work, using real science, not internet magic. Method number 1, the dry powder for the hard spaces. This is for the cracks in your driveway, the gaps between your patio stones, and the edges of your walkways. The places where weeds sprout in tight lines and are impossible to pull. Do not mix anything. Do not use water. You need 1 ingredient, a plain box of baking soda. The cheap kind from the baking aisle that costs about $2. Here is the step-by-step instruction. Wait for a dry afternoon, when the concrete or the stone is completely dry. Take a broom and sweep the dirt and loose debris out of the cracks as best you can. Take your box of dry baking soda and pour the powder directly into the cracks where the weeds are growing. Do not sprinkle it lightly. Pour a solid line of white powder right into the gap. Take your broom and sweep back and forth over the crack, forcing the dry powder deep down into the crevice. Walk away. Here is the real chemistry of what you just did. By packing dry baking soda into that tight space, you have completely altered the soil chemistry in that tiny microenvironment. Baking soda is highly alkaline. When the evening dew falls, or the first light rain comes, the moisture activates the baking soda. It radically spikes the pH of the soil in that crack and dumps a massive load of sodium right onto the roots of the weed. The high alkalinity destroys the cell walls of the root, and the sodium pulls all the water out of the plant. The weed dehydrates from the root up. Within a few days, the weed shrivels into a black, crispy thread. Better yet, because the baking soda is packed into the crack, it stays there. It makes that specific crack a hostile environment for any new seeds blowing in on the wind. You sweep the powder in once in the spring, and that walkway stays clean all summer. No poison, no pulling, $2. Method number 2, the sunburn for the surface. This is for the surface weeds growing in gravel, along fence lines or isolated patches, where you want nothing to grow, but you need an immediate kill. This uses vinegar, but not the vinegar from your kitchen. The vinegar you put on a salad is 5% acetic acid. It is far too weak to reliably kill a tough weed. What you need is horticultural vinegar, which is 20% to 30% acetic acid. You can buy a gallon of this at any farm supply store or hardware store for about $20, and it will last you a very long time. Here is the step-by-step instruction. You must pick a day that is hot, sunny, and dry. If it is cloudy, do not do it. If rain is expected, do not do it. The sun is half of the weapon. Wait until about noon when the sun is at its highest and the heat is beating down. Put on safety goggles and heavy rubber gloves. I am completely serious about this, and I will explain the safety in a moment. Pour the 20% vinegar into a clean pump sprayer. Add exactly 1 tablespoon of plain liquid dish soap to the sprayer. Do not use baking soda. The dish soap is a surfactant. Weed leaves are covered in a waxy coating that makes water bead up and roll off. The dish soap breaks that surface tension, forcing the vinegar to spread out flat and stick to every millimeter of the leaf. Swirl the tank gently to mix the soap without making it foam too much. Walk out to your fence line and spray the leaves of the weeds until they are dripping wet. Here is the science. the 20% acetic acid eats straight through the waxy cuticle of the leaf. The blazing midday sun hits the unprotected plant, and the acid rapidly draws all the moisture out of the foliage. If you spray at noon, by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you will watch those weeds turn brown, curl up, and crisp into dust right before your eyes. It is incredibly satisfying, but I must be honest with you about its limits. This is a contact killer. It destroys everything above the soil line. For annual weeds, this kills them dead. For deep taproot weeds or rhizome weeds, it burns their heads off. They will have to use up energy from their roots to grow new leaves. If you spray them again, as soon as the new leaves appear, they will eventually starve and die. But you must be persistent. It is a powerful tool, but it requires the sun to do the heavy lifting. Method number 3, the blackout for the deep roots. This is the ultimate secret of my wife, Rebecca's garden. This is how you defeat bindweed, ground elder, and horsetail. This is how you reclaim an entire, overgrown garden bed without tilling, without chemicals, and without ever hurting your back. It is called the blackout method, or no-dig gardening. When you take a rototiller and churn up the soil to destroy weeds, you are actually planting a new crop. The soil is full of thousands of dormant weed seeds, waiting for a flash of sunlight. When you till, you bring them to the surface, give them light, and they sprout. We never till to kill weeds. We smother them. Here is the step-by-step instruction. Do not pull the weeds. Leave them exactly where they are. Go to an appliance store or a grocery store and ask for their large, plain brown cardboard boxes. You want the thick, uncolored cardboard. Remove all the plastic packing tape and the metal staples. Lay the cardboard boxes flat, directly over the weeds in your garden bed. You are going to carpet the entire area. Here is the absolute, non-negotiable rule. You must overlap the edges of the cardboard by at least 6 inches. If you leave a seam or a gap, even an inch wide, the weeds beneath will sense the sunlight and travel horizontally underground to push up through that gap. Overlap them tightly, like shingles on a roof. Take a garden hose and soak the cardboard until it is heavy and wet, so it molds to the ground and does not blow away. Cover the entire layer of cardboard with 3 to 4 inches of organic mulch. You can use wood chips, straw, or grass clippings. Spread it thick, walk away. Here is the magnificent biology of what you just accomplished. You have plunged the weeds into total darkness. Without sunlight, photosynthesis stops immediately. The weeds cannot produce food. They begin to use up the reserves in their deep taproots and rhizomes, struggling to reach the light. But the wet cardboard is heavy, and the mulch is heavy. They push, they exhaust themselves, and eventually the entire root system dies of starvation deep underground. Meanwhile, the earthworms in your soil smell the wet, decaying cardboard. Earthworms love cardboard. They rise to the surface, eating the cardboard and pulling the organic matter down into the soil, leaving behind nutrient-rich castings. Over the course of the season, the weeds rot and become compost. The cardboard rots and becomes compost. The mulch breaks down and feeds the soil web. By the next spring, you have a garden bed of rich, dark, weed-free soil, and you never bent over to pull a single root. You did not fight the weed. You simply took away its light and let the earthworms do your labor. Now I must pause and give you the honest safety word, because I respect you enough to tell you the risks. First, regarding the horticultural vinegar. 20% or 30% acetic acid is a strong corrosive chemical. It is natural, but it is dangerous. If the wind blows a mist of it into your eyes, it can cause severe damage, even blindness. If it gets on your skin, it will burn you. You must wear safety goggles that wrap around your eyes, not just reading glasses. You must wear heavy rubber gloves, long pants, and closed-toe shoes. Treat it with exactly the same respect you would give to battery acid. Second, regarding the baking soda. Do not use the baking soda method inside your vegetable beds or near the roots of your prized roses. The heavy load of sodium will poison the soil for your good plants just as surely as it poisons the weeds. Keep the dry baking soda strictly isolated to concrete cracks, brick patios, and gravel driveways where you want absolutely nothing to grow. And finally, I want to say a truthful word about nature itself. There is a terrible habit in the modern world of looking at a garden and wanting to annihilate everything that you did not personally plant. Take the dandelion, for example. The lawn chemical companies have spent millions of dollars convincing you that a yellow flower in your green grass is a sign of failure. It is not a failure. In early spring, when the weather is still cold and nothing else has bloomed, the dandelion is one of the very first sources of nectar and pollen for the honeybees. Rebecca's hives rely on those dandelions to wake up and rebuild their strength after the long, hard winter. The taproot of the dandelion goes deep into the hard clay, pulling up calcium and iron to the surface, actually improving the poor soil it grows in. We do not want a barren, sterilized patch of green plastic grass. We want a living ecosystem. Eliminate the creeping bindweed that chokes your tomatoes. Absolutely. Clear the driveway cracks so the concrete does not split, but leave a patch of dandelions at the edge of the yard for the bees. A good farmer is a steward of the land, not a tyrant. You are managing life, not destroying it. I want to take a moment, because this is the part that matters, and it is bigger than baking soda and cardboard. Think about who profits from the way you have been taught to fight weeds. The chemical companies profit. And they profit most when you feel overwhelmed. They sell you a $40 jug of poison. You spray it. It ruins the soil microbiology, which makes your garden plants weaker. Weaker plants require you to buy synthetic chemical fertilizers to prop them up. The empty poisoned soil is the perfect breeding ground for the next generation of resilient weed seeds, so the weeds return, and you go back to the store to buy another jug of poison. It is a brilliant, cyclical business model, built entirely on your frustration. And the internet personalities profit too. They profit from your clicks. They set up a camera, mix kitchen vinegar and baking soda because it foams up and looks magical, and they sell you the illusion of a quick fix. They do not have to live with the results. They get their advertising revenue, whether the recipe works or not. There is no money in teaching a man or a woman the truth. Nobody can build a corporate empire by telling you to go to the grocery store, ask for the free cardboard boxes they were going to throw away in the recycling bin, and lay them on your soil. Nobody can sell you a monthly subscription to a $2 box of baking soda swept into a crack. The hardware store does not have a sign on the door saying, "Do not buy our chemicals, just block the sun." They hide the 20% vinegar in the back, and they put the branded plastic jugs of poison right at eye level by the cash register. That is not a grand evil conspiracy. It is simply how the money flows. A system that makes its profit from your continuous struggle has absolutely no incentive to hand you a permanent solution. My people never forgot these methods because we never bought into the cycle of consumerism. We could not rely on a truck delivering chemicals, so we had to rely on observation. We watched how the forest floors stay clean under a thick layer of autumn leaves, the natural blackout method. We learned the difference between feeding the soil and poisoning the earth. The knowledge was not lost. It was just shouted over by loud advertisements and flashy internet tricks. You are being told the truth now. You do not have to be a captive customer anymore. So here is what I want you to do this weekend. Do not go to the garden center. Go to the grocery store. Ask the manager for the heavy plain brown cardboard boxes from the produce department. Pick up a cheap box of baking soda from the baking aisle. Go home, find the absolute worst patch of creeping weeds in your garden beds. Do not pull them. Do not till them. Lay the cardboard directly over them, overlapping the edges by a full 6 inches. Soak the cardboard with the hose until it is heavy and dark. Cover it with 3 inches of mulch, wood chips, or grass clippings. Walk away. You have just won that battle for the rest of the year. Take your box of baking soda out to the driveway. Find the cracks where the weeds always mock you. Sweep out the dirt. Pour the dry powder directly into the gap. Sweep it in tight and let the evening dew do the rest. If you have a tough patch of weeds along a gravel fence line, order a gallon of 20% horticultural vinegar online or from an agricultural supply. Put on your safety goggles, add a tablespoon of dish soap, and spray them at high noon on a hot sunny day. Watch them turn to dust by supper time. You will have spent less than $20. You will not have broken your back. You will not have poisoned your soil, and you will have taken back control of your own land from the companies that want you kneeling in the dirt forever. Tell me in the comments below, what is the most stubborn, frustrating weed in your garden right now, is it? The bindweed choking your fence, the ground elder taking over your beds, or the horsetail that never seems to die? I read every single one of these comments, and knowing exactly what you are fighting helps me know what to teach you next. Next time I am going to show you the old, quiet way my family keeps the tomato hornworms and the squash bugs out of the vegetable patch without ever using a drop of pesticide. It involves a simple companion planting method, using a flower you probably already know, and a specific way of building the soil that makes the plants taste wrong to the bugs. It is the natural next step after clearing your beds today. Until then, stop buying poison, overlap your cardboard, respect the bees. And remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.